Way.
Jaskowitz.
All right. Hello, this is Aaron Price, the CEO of TechUnited New Jersey. I am here today with Liz Jaskowitz from Robert Half Technology. Liz, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Hey, Aaron.
Nice to see you. So I'm in Hoboken, New Jersey. Where are you geographically based?
I am in Highlands, New Jersey, in Monmouth County.
Nice, down the shore. Some solid
Yeah.
representation of Jersey going on here. You used to live in Hoboken, is that right?
So I lived in Hoboken 3 years ago, uptown. I don't know where you're at in Hoboken, but
Downtown,
yeah.
loving it. Where were you in Hoboken?
So I was up on 12th and Willow, right by the Trader Joe's up there for about a year, and then I moved down to Seabright, New Jersey, and now in Highlands.
Yeah. And so what is one thing people get wrong about the Jersey Shore?
There's a lot of things. That's a loaded question, Aaron.
It is a loaded question.
There's a lot of things. I mean, there's the whole Central Jersey doesn't exist. There is the whole Monmouth County seaside area. Like, there's a whole disconnect.
I gotta say, I'm not a big fan of Central Jersey as a thing. I kind of am into the North and the South. Are you into the Central?
I am, only because I live in the Central, technically.
I mean, you could just claim North and be done with it.
That's up for debate. It's up for
It
debate.
is. I know. I sorry to digress here. So you're with Robert Half Technologies, right?
Yes, correct.
Tell people who may not know what Robert Half does.
So Robert Half Technology is a line of business within Robert Half. Robert Half is the first and largest staffing agency in the world. They were founded in 1948. So they have 7 different lines of business, everything from marketing and creative to healthcare, legal. I specifically focus on IT recruiting. So what we do is kind of match IT professionals to employers. So we'll provide them on a consulting to hire, a full-time basis, while also working with those IT professionals, trying to get them the best job that they're looking for.
So what are you seeing, especially with what's going on with the pandemic? What are you seeing in the IT world?
So I think a lot of things started to shift. I mean, we saw a lot of different industries, unfortunately, kind of veered off a little bit in terms of where they were at. But with like pharmaceutical, with healthcare, with financial, mortgage loan processing companies, a lot of those companies have definitely boomed, as you can imagine. Since we're now kind of a remote workforce, a lot of companies had to adjust to their remote work model. I was on site 5 days a week until the pandemic happened. And personally, I haven't been in the office since March 16th.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And I'm sure the same for a lot of other folks, especially in the Central Jersey or North and South Jersey area. So it depends on the industry. I mean, the hot industries right now are, as you can imagine, e-commerce, healthcare, finance, pharmaceutical, now higher education and education in general. Just because it's back to school, people are kind of trying to figure out if they're going back remotely or going back on site a few days a week. So depending on the industry where you were at, that's kind of how people have been affected.
Got it. Did you go to Rutgers?
I did.
You're getting some Rutgers love from Tariq. There he. We'll bring that up on screen. There he is.
Are you? How'd you know?
Yeah. He must on LinkedIn. He must have checked out the profile. But that's cool. Go Rutgers.
Yeah. So I graduated from Rutgers, yes, years ago. But I saw that they just announced that football will be back on. So.
Yeah, you big fan?
Yeah, well, I'm a big Rutgers fan in general. It's actually kind of sort of apart from Robert Half, how I had found out about the NJTC or TechUnited, through a few Rutgers connections, because obviously I lived on campus there and you guys were located right on Albany Street or right off of. So there's definitely a huge presence, especially with Rutgers.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time there. What's been your experience with what was the New Jersey Tech Council is now TechUnited New Jersey? Tariq jumping in here. Again.
Nice. 2008.
Yeah, we'll go back to that. But if you have comments or questions for Liz or for myself, anyone watching on any of the various platforms, please drop it in the comments. We'll try to address them. But getting back to that question, what's been your experience with what has become TechUnited, and what more do you think we can do to serve our membership?
I think it's been awesome. I mean, you guys have a very diverse amount of, I guess, events or a diverse array of events that you host. I've gone to everything from startup events to the New Jersey Tech Council award events to healthcare to education. I think it's been great. There's a lot of different people that go, a lot of familiar faces, but you always meet new people when you're going. It also provides a huge opportunity to meet people that you would never get to meet, because people from New York come, people from New Jersey obviously come, and anyone from a CIO to a CEO to somebody who just wants to network and get to know people. It's all different types of folks that attend these events. So I
Yeah.
think it's been great. We definitely encourage, especially everyone from Robert Half. They always like to go and represent. So it's been awesome.
Well, we really appreciate you guys showing up. What when going back to Robert Half, when people for employers right now, what do you think are special or important differentiating ways, especially in the pandemic market where so much is in flux, that employers should be thinking about recruiting and bringing on new employees?
Absolutely. So I think there's been kind of not so much of a misconception, but in terms of unemployment rates right now, I think that the global unemployment rate is like 10%. But for IT specifically, it's still under 4%. So these people are still really hard to find and hard to retain. So while everyone's been working remotely, a huge thing that we've seen is just employee appreciation, right? Like how flexible are these companies willing to be with windowed working, because you have a lot of people that are just working their full-time jobs in addition to working another full-time job, which could be parenting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're basically juggling all these different occupations and huge things in your life. So companies have had to be more flexible and have like a little bit more understanding in terms of like people are actually doing these things all at the same time.
Have
So
you found that, like, in the interview process, there are some company cultures where talking about a work-life balance may be a signal that an employee might not be as ambitious or dedicated. But now I think people are more aware of the need to balance a home life. Do you find that that's a more acceptable question for a candidate to bring up, or do you find that it's a discussion that an employer is more proactive to bring up?
definitely. And we have those conversations up front with the hiring managers and the candidates, just so that we know everything, so we know if it's going to be a good match. There's some companies that we work with, depending on the industry. I mean, obviously, healthcare and in hospitals, they're kind of expected to go on site to some capacity, at least maybe 1 or 2 days a week. So they'll make that known to us up front. But
Yeah.
then you have other companies that they could be agencies or different settings that they're like, we don't care what the hours you work are. We don't care where you're working out of. You could be like on vacation in Puerto Rico. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So we definitely cover that on the front end. And people have been really understanding about it.
Are you finding that that's now part of your recruitment process, is understanding the on-site versus off-site requirement of both the individual and the employer?
Absolutely. I mean, from the front end, we kind of discussed what percentage are they expected to be on site, off site, when the pandemic kind of, I guess, things turn for the better and we can go back on site. Like, how often are they going to be expected to go there?
Yeah.
I mean, we've all kind of seen in the news from Google and all of the like larger tech giants. They're like, oh, you can work from home forever.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of other companies, they want people to be on site occasionally. So that's definitely part of our vetting process in the beginning now.
What are you finding? Like, what's your prediction on the longer term? And I know this may not be, data driven, officially
Right.
Robert Half's recommendation, but just your own anecdotal experience with the community. What do you think is going to happen with long term, future of work and people going in full time, part time, no time? What do you think is going to happen?
Just completely opinionated. Not this is not
Yeah.
dated at all.
Yeah. Well, whatever you're hearing, I'm curious, with the employers you speak to, what you think is going to happen or what you're hearing might happen.
Yep. So just in having conversations with my clients throughout the New Jersey area, it's going to be optional to go back. They're calling it now the anywhere workforce, which
Yeah.
has opened up the candidate pool significantly, especially with those hard to find skill sets. I think especially with like security folks or data science folks, e-commerce and whatnot. But I think that it's going to be more so optional or just a couple of days a week, depending on your
Yeah.
schedule.
Yeah. All right. What I think is interesting, obviously, we're both in New Jersey. I'm with TechUnited New Jersey. And for a long time, we've looked at the New York market as kind of the prime market here. And there's often been a friendly, competitive nature. But with the pandemic, I think there's a real opportunity for us to take some of that market where we have, wider work, broader opportunities for workspaces, companies in a larger footprint. I'm wondering, are you seeing any of that? Are you seeing that there's a surge of needs in New Jersey that's different than New York? Are you able to recruit differently for New Jersey focused roles that maybe you were losing people to a New York office before? Are you seeing any of that?
Absolutely, especially because of the difference in pay scales from going into the city and being in New Jersey. Now that you can basically work from anywhere, it's kind of an even playing field. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of the people who are living in New York City, if they had decided to stay there during this whole pandemic, they're now open to working jobs in New Jersey, especially if we find out on the front end that they're not going to have to go in at all. So
Yeah.
that's kind of why they're addressing it as the anywhere workforce, because we're placing people who are living out in California, they're working for companies in New Jersey. So there's
And,
just a lot
and
more flexibility than there was.
and has that changed? Like, were you ever looking for candidates in California before March 16th? I mean, was that
No.
ever even a thing?
Sometimes, depending on the skill set, if it's a very high level niche skill set, say if it's like a certain implementation and whatnot, we can have the flexibility if the clients are open to it. However, after the pandemic kind of started, it opened things up in terms of finding talent, keeping talent.
There was an article yesterday that several companies are allowing their employees to move wherever they like, but then adjusting the level, the band of their salary based on the geography in which they live. Are you seeing any of that? You know, the cost of living in Tucson is different than it might be in San Francisco, for instance. Are you seeing any companies around New Jersey contemplate that kind of thing?
We have not. But New Jersey has always kind of been at the top of the scale in kind of hand in hand with New York City,
Yeah.
just in terms of pay. But no, we haven't. I can imagine that they might say if it were somewhere around like the Midwest area. We send out these salary guides every year, and we just came out with our 2021 salary guide, and it shows the difference in pay scales and the difference in salaries and the different variances depending on where you're located. And New York, New Jersey are always kind of at the top of that scale.
Yeah. So if you were an employer, if you're making recommendations to an employer right now, what are some of the key things that you would recommend that they showcase to be an attractive place for, especially like you mentioned, right? IT talent is still in very, very high demand. How do they stand out?
So just having the flexibility, windowed working, understanding that people have stuff going on at home.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is my first introduction to the term windowed working. So maybe you can explain what that means.
So basically, it means, say it's specifically, I think, for people who have things going on at home. Say if you have young kids and you're educating them and they aren't going back to school or they're not physically going back into the classroom, you can organize it with your manager, of course, but work, say, like 9 to 10, and then school your child from 10 to 12 and then go back to work. So it's really just these windows of your like personal time and then your work time. Like, here's when you can call me, here's when I'm available, here's when you can get in touch with me when you will have my full attention.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will be working basically my other full-time job. So
Yeah. Yeah. We have some of that going on in front of
yes.
me here. So windowed working opportunities. Then where do you finding is successful? Is it what you just explained, sort of a few 2-3 hour blocks, or is
Yeah.
it be available just in the evenings, or do you find that the best recruitment tactic is to just be flexible? Because obviously there's some team implications there, right? If you can't get your full team engaged in the same, hour with the same windows of hours, there are some business challenges. So I'm curious what you're finding is successful from a recruitment platform, and if you have any insight into what's actually successful for the businesses.
Absolutely. And we have this situation internally too with my team. We have a lot of people on my team have kids at home and they're schooling them at home. So we'll have our kickoff meetings every single day at 8:30 in the morning and everybody is there. So that's when we catch up, and then we catch up in the afternoons. We have 2 calls a day. So we see that's really successful because we set the tone for the day. What are the tasks? What are we going to do? Okay, so-and-so is not going to be available for these 3 hours, Monday through Friday. And then from then on, she'll be reachable. So just setting the right expectation. And then in terms of being more attractive to different employees, it's really just having that flexibility and understanding that this isn't the world that we were in back in March.
Does Robert Half make any onboarding recommendations now, especially given the change in work culture? We've onboarded someone to TechUnited over the pandemic, and it's gone well, but it certainly brings unique challenges. Does Robert Half make recommendations to clients on the best practices on bringing people on remotely?
It definitely does bring up challenges, especially because you're not sitting right next to them in an office. But I think we can all agree that video calls have kind of saved us during this whole thing. So in terms of recommendations, just clear communication, like setting up daily meetings at certain times and just time blocking. Like, this is when I'll be basically onboarding you. This is when you can do this task. This is when you can do this task. So apart from window working, it's just time blocking and
Yeah.
found that to be effective.
Going back to our number one fan, Tariq asked, "Is it easier to make placements for remote positions?" I have to plead ignorant on what HM requirements are, but he asked, "Or do HM requirements become more specific?" I wonder if he meant HR or if you know what HM means.
I
But
think he means hiring managers.
that would make sense, wouldn't
Yeah.
it? I mean, that's why you're here, because I don't know windowing, HM. But yes, well, how would you respond to that question?
I would say it definitely makes it easier to find those hard to find skill sets back through the security, e-commerce, data science, because it broadens the horizons, it broadens the geography. Typically companies only want to hire people within like 20 miles of their offices so that
Yeah,
they can get there and they don't have to worry about the commute. However, now it's definitely easier to find people and people are more just flexible because they don't have to go into the office.
right.
And when people are not going to the office, they tend to be a little bit more flexible on pay as it is, because you're not paying for that commute. You're not paying to drive. You're not paying tolls. You're sitting out of the comfort of your home.
Are you finding that now that people's salary requirements are decreasing?
Not technically decreasing, but people are more flexible. Like, they'll take a job that's paying $5 an hour less if they can work remotely full time after the
Yeah.
pandemic ends, as opposed to going on site 3-4 days a week.
Yeah. And to be clear, by the way, because for those who are potentially considering Robert Half, you just mentioned as an example, $5 an hour less. Does Robert Half place hourly workers as opposed to annualized salary workers? Specifically, what are the offerings here? People are interested.
Correct. So my team specifically, we focus in the consulting space, which is mostly project work. So say if a company is doing an implementation or they're doing a migration or an upgrade, they'll come to us and hire these hourly employees. They have benefits. They have the same benefits as the Robert Half employees do. We offer a lot of different avenues that you can go down.
Yeah.
So if you're in the consulting space, obviously we'd love to talk to you, but we also do place full-time folks.
So let's talk about working at Robert Half. What's the company culture like there?
I think it's great. I mean, I've been here for almost 5 years. This was my first job out of college, which
Which
is,
is pretty unusual for someone your age to be at a place for 5 years is not the trend right now.
yeah, I have a
So
lot of friends that are in their fourth, fifth jobs, and
yeah,
I mean, I think I just got lucky in terms of my team. There's a lot of tenure here. There's a lot of people to learn from. I've actually gone back, speaking of Rutgers, to speak with a lot of the, I guess, people who are in the SKY program, which is like the information technology program, and the HR program as well, to talk to them about career paths who are here. I've been in 4 different positions since I started working at Robert Half. So they
yeah.
definitely promote within. And, if you want to be here, if you're dedicated, if you work hard, you can make a really great career.
How would you say that Robert Half differentiates from the other professional providers like this?
So there are a ton of different staffing agencies, but I think just in terms of name brand Robert Half, when you're talking to people, they know who we are. We're the first and the largest company. We've been around a really long time. Year in and year out, we're voted one of the best places to work from Forbes. We've won a ton of accolades. And while we're a global company, there's a huge local presence. Like, we have 7 offices throughout New Jersey. So we really get to know the candidates and where they're from. A lot of times, like, they're from, say, Monmouth County or Hoboken, just like we put that together within 2 seconds of talking.
Yeah.
So we really make it a focus to get to know our clients and employees one-on-one. We also meet with everybody face-to-face before we even send them over to a position, all of our candidates. So we know what you're getting before you interview them.
If there's anybody who's watching and is interested in being part of the candidate pool or looking at certain roles that are available in your network, how can they learn more?
So they can reach out to me. I can put my email right in the chat here, or just add me on LinkedIn. I would be happy to have a conversation, whether it be a candidate or a client. I mean, it's all about networking, and I've seen that specifically with New Jersey Tech Council and TechUnited. Just going to these events, and you never know who knows who or who's networking where. So
That's right. What if you are comfortable with it, I can put your email right in that little banner ad. What's your email address?
So it's Liz
Is it
dot.
really long that this was a mistake to ask?
It might be. And then my last name,
Yeah, I
J A N.
got it.
You have
I
it
got it. Yeah.
at RHT as in RobertHalfTechnology.com.
Let's see if I got this right. You tell me.
Okay. Yes, you got
All
it.
right.
First try.
Excellent. It's a little challenging, like on the fly, but you know, we did it. So, what are some of the stranger interview questions or interview experiences you've heard through your experience with Robert Half?
Oh, there's been a ton. I mean, in addition to obviously like IT skill sets and whatnot, I've heard if you could be an animal, what would you be?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like those
What
random.
animal would you be?
Um, I don't know. I mean, it's funny because I feel like everyone says the same thing, like, oh, a lion or something like that.
Yeah, that is
But
the first thing that comes to mind, but it's really not a great answer, is it?
I mean, it's kind of just like a generic answer, but I
It
mean, it
really
does
is.
have good qualities. I mean, I would probably be like a giraffe, maybe
How
something like
come?
that. I mean, always standing tall, always, like viewing everything out before making a decision.
Good answer.
What would you
I
do?
didn't, for those watching, Liz was not prepared for
Yeah, it
to
wasn't.
receive the random interview questions. What else have you heard that you may or may not feel like answering?
I don't know. I mean, I think especially years back, there's always been the generic, like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses?
Yeah,
Um, I've heard like, what would your previous manager say about you? I don't love that question because it's kind of like you're thinking like there's a reason why I'm interviewing here.
yeah, that's a
So
good
I
point.
try to steer away from that, especially when we're doing internal interviews. Like I like to just hear about their story and just like tell me why you're interested, tell me why you're looking. And just more open-ended questions is definitely the way to go, as
I
opposed to
have
just
found when I ask people like, well, what would your parents say are your top strengths, or what would your mom say is your something you need to work on? There's something about forcing people to think through that lens that where they let their guard down and they say something that's very interesting about their own personality, which everyone's buttoned up in the interview, and then you ask, oh, what would your mom say about your strengths or weaknesses? Oh, my mom thinks I'm such a pain in the ass or whatever. And like I've gotten that before where they like their sort of guard is down, and then you get some insight into something interesting. So I mean I hear you on the normal questions, but
yeah.
sometimes that framing does open up a window to something.
Oh, definitely, because it's like I wasn't expecting that, and especially, oh, what would my mom think? Like I don't
Yeah.
know.
Oh, my mom, a lot of drama
A lot
there.
of things, definitely a lot of
Yeah.
things.
What would your mom say is your number one quality, Liz?
I actually was texting her before about this because I was like, we always do different fun facts like in the morning to kick off the day. Like we'll do different like fun random facts or different questions to kind of like open up the conversation. I was like, well, like what do you think like about me? Like what is my fun fact? And she was like, I could say a lot of things that you don't want to know.
Your mom said that?
Yeah, but she was just laughing. My mom actually works at Rutgers, so she's like, whenever I'm going up there, whenever I'm going to these events, she's always out and about. But no, she just said like I'm an avid health freak, like I'm obsessed with the Peloton. So she's always like,
Man,
yeah, she's always joking around about that. You're a Peloton fan too?
I am. Picked
Yeah,
one up like the week of that March 16th week, knowing that things were going south, and so I'm a big fan. Yeah. Any
yeah.
suggested I can't remember the word, but the trainers? Yeah,
Yes. I mean, I have a lot. I love Leanne Hainsby. She's awesome.
she's
Um,
good.
yeah,
A lot of
she's really
energy.
good. I love Cody, but I think like everyone.
My nephew who's 15 is a big Cody fan. I can't get into it. I'm not
You have
feeling
to
Cody.
be in the mood. Like if you're trying to laugh, if you're like kind of having an off day and you need like a good laugh, he's a good one. Ali Love is awesome. I think she's
Okay.
not an announcer for the Knicks. Like she's just a great public speaker.
Yeah, she is. I'm a fan. It's really and amazing to see how that business has grown.
It's crazy. I
Yeah,
got mine back in February and I've had 16 friends get it since.
it's really insane.
Yeah.
Um, any health tips for people who don't have a Peloton to stay active during the pandemic?
Yeah, there are a ton of different apps right now, or throughout the pandemic that have offered like at least a month free for different trials to see what you guys would like. They do Pure Bar, obviously Peloton did the same thing. I think Equinox did it as well. Soul Cycle. I mean, if you don't have an in-home gym, there's different workouts that you can do just on the floor or just going outside, I guess, before winter is upon us, which is sooner than
one of the reasons I'm holding on to every minute of summer by sitting outside right now.
I know, I don't blame you.
Have you tried Soul Cycle? What do you think about the Soul Cycle versus Peloton?
I used to do the one in Hoboken.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I loved it, but I think I like Peloton a little bit better, but because you do it on your own time. You know, like you can.
What about the culture? You know, speaking of company culture, we'll make this make a little more business sense while we're at it. Very different cultures in those companies.
Oh, yeah.
And, my wife's kind of hardcore, was hardcore Soul Cycle, and now being here has got more to the Peloton. But what do you think about how, you know, the cultural experience inside of Soul Cycle versus Peloton? I'm going to ask you to follow up more broadly about these companies hiring, but with those two at least, what attracts you to Peloton over Soul Cycle?
Peloton has a lot of different challenges, and they have a lot of different, like, I guess, slogans in terms of like getting everyone connected. Like their whole slogan is "Together we go far" and one Peloton, and it's just more of a sense of community. Yeah. I think, which is also kind of like what Robert Half does. I mean, we have like a ton of things that bring us together. We have these weekly calls with our president, so it just makes you feel more included.
Yeah.
And people
you know, again, going back to the hiring question, what do you think are effective ways, you know, in a traditional hiring environment where you might be able to go into an office and get a sense of the company culture and the energy in the office and learn more tangibly and physically about the culture of an organization? How do you think employers and employees can get a better sense of a good culture fit when we're all virtual?
So I think that the interviewing culture has changed over the past few years, just in terms of being more inclusive, right? So when you're interviewing, even at Robert Half, you're not meeting with just one of us, you're meeting everyone. So you get to talk to all these different people about their career paths and how long they've been here and what do they like to do in their spare time and things like that. So when we're sending candidates onto client sites, whether it be an agency or whether it be a financial company or a pharmaceutical company, you can tell a lot about a team's culture by just meeting with a bunch of different people, how people greet you at the door, how they look at you kind of when you're walking throughout the office. If people are like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" Like, you know that it's like a friendly group of people. But it depends on what you're looking for. Some people like to get in and out. They like to just like go to work and then go home. But if you're working like on my team, you're going to talk to everyone.
Well, but virtually, right?
Yes.
How do you get the same sense of walking around the office, people are saying hello, say hello and look like they're having fun versus, you know, you're not walking around the room with your camera on?
So we actually did this the other day, last Friday, and we didn't kind of like bombard them with everyone on a video call because like you kind of have to be anticipating that a little bit. But we were just inviting people in on the video call, like, "Hey, I'm going to invite so-and-so. Hey, we're going to invite so-and-so." And then we'll drop off for a little bit. Like you guys have a one-on-one and then we'll have the whole team on. So you can kind of see how it interacts together, see how everyone's kind of like playing off of each other's words. Luckily my team, there's a lot of tenure. Like my boss has been here for almost 20 years. And then there's other people who've been here for like 8, 9, and I'm going on 5. So a lot of people just work really well together, and you can tell that from a video interview, unfortunately, since we can't be really in the office all together right now.
It's slightly different. So for people watching, you know, culturally, the TechUnited community is about, you know, giving first, getting second. It's about trying to help one another out. For those watching who want to do something to help you out, or personally, or Robert Half, or both, what's an ask that you have to this community?
I think just reach out to us. If you have friends or family that's looking for jobs, whether it be in IT or outside of IT, reach out to me. We have 7 different lines of business. We have administrative as well. So anything that we can do to help you, just let us help you. Refer anyone. I mean, it's all about networking. I mean, that makes the world go round. So I'd be happy to speak with anyone.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you spending time with us today. Enjoy Central New Jersey, and appreciate Robert Half's support. And we will talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right, bye.